My name is Ava Reed, and 3 years ago, my dad gave our family business to my brother instead of me. He said I wasn't leadership material. But when my phone rang that Tuesday night, Dad's voice was shaking. Ava, I need you to come home. Jackson lost a $10 million deal, and now he's missing. My perfect brother had destroyed the biggest contract in our company's history. But what I discovered next shocked me. Jackson didn't lose that deal by accident. Someone forced him to. And the person helping them was someone we trusted completely. By the time I figured out the truth, people were pointing guns at us. What I found out about my brother will shock you too. You won't see this ending coming. I was eating cereal for dinner again when my phone buzzed. The bowl sat on my tiny kitchen table, the same table I'd bought at a garage sale 3 years ago when I moved into this cramped apartment. Frosted Flakes floated in milk that was probably going bad tomorrow, but I didn't care. This was my life now. The phone kept buzzing. I almost didn't answer it. Most calls at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night were either spam or someone wanting money. I didn't have, but something made me look at the screen. Dad. My heart stopped. Dad hadn't called me in 3 years. Not since the day he handed over Thornfield Construction Company to my brother Marcus. Not since he looked me in the eye and said, "You're just not leadership material, Zara." I stared at his name on the screen. Part of me wanted to let it go to voicemail. Part of me wanted to throw the phone across the room, but a bigger part of me needed to know why he was calling now. Hello? My voice came out colder than I meant it to. Zara, Dad's voice was shaky. He sounded old, scared. I need you to come home. I laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Now you need me. That's funny, Dad. What happened to Marcus being the perfect son? What happened to him being ready to take over the family business? There was silence on the other end. I could hear Dad breathing, like he was trying to find the right words. Something terrible has happened, he finally said. Let me guess. Marcus messed up something small and you want me to fix it? Just like when we were kids? No, Zara. This is different. His voice cracked. Your brother lost everything. The biggest deal in our company's history. $10 million, gone. The cereal spoon slipped from my hand and clattered into the bowl.
$10 million?
That was more money than Thornfield Construction had ever handled in a single contract. That was the kind of money that could set up a family for generations. What do you mean, gone? I asked. The Riverside Development Project. Marcus was handling it himself. He said he had everything under control, but something went wrong during the final presentation. The client pulled out completely. They want their deposit back. They're threatening to sue us. I stood up, pacing around my small living room. The Riverside Project. I'd heard whispers about it in the construction community. It was supposed to be huge, a shopping complex that would bring jobs and money to our little town of Millbrook. Dad, how could you let Marcus handle something that big by himself? He's never done anything close to that size. He said he was ready. Dad's voice got louder, defensive. He'd been working on it for months. He knew every detail, or at least I thought he did. I rubbed my forehead, feeling a headache coming on. Okay, so Marcus screwed up. Why are you calling me? You made it clear 3 years ago that I wasn't wanted. Because, Dad's voice got quiet again. Because we're going to lose everything, Zara. The business your grandfather built. The business his father built before him. 4 generations of Thornfields, and it's all going to disappear. Something twisted in my chest. I tried to stay angry, but underneath the anger was something else. Love, maybe. Or just sadness for what we used to be. Thornfield Construction wasn't just a business to me. It was where I learned to use my hands, where Grandpa taught me the difference between doing a job and doing it right. It was where I discovered I had a gift for seeing how buildings fit together, how to solve problems that stumped everyone else. It was also where I learned that being the best wasn't enough if you were born the wrong gender. There's more, Dad continued. Marcus is missing. What do you mean, missing? He disappeared right after the deal fell through. Nobody's seen him for 2 days. His fiancée, Sarah, is worried sick. The police won't do anything yet because he's an adult, and it hasn't been long enough. My mind raced. Marcus might be weak, might be Dad's favorite, but he wasn't stupid. He wouldn't just run away from a problem this big. Unless, Dad, do you think something happened to him? I don't know. That's why I need you to come home. You're the only one smart enough to figure out what went wrong. There it was. The admission I'd been waiting 3 years to hear. I was smart. I was capable. I was the one Dad turned to when everything fell apart. But it was too late, wasn't it? I have a job here, Dad. I have a life. Do you? He asked quietly. Are you happy, Zara? Really happy? I looked around my apartment, at the garage sale furniture and the empty pizza boxes, and the stack of bills on the counter, at the window that looked out onto a parking lot instead of the mountains back home. That's not the point, I said. Please, Dad whispered. I know I hurt you. I know I made the wrong choice. But right now, I need my daughter. The smart one. The one who never gives up. I closed my eyes. 3 years of anger warred with a lifetime of love for the family business, for the employees who'd watched me grow up, for the legacy that was about to disappear. I'll think about it, I said. Zara, wait! I hung up. But even as I set the phone down, I knew I was already packing. I threw clothes into my old duffel bag, t-shirts, jeans, work boots, the same practical clothes I'd worn when I worked construction before. Dad broke my heart. My hands moved on their own while my brain tried to catch up with what I was doing. This was stupid. This was exactly what Dad expected. Zara would come running the moment he called, ready to fix whatever Marcus had broken. But I couldn't stop packing. The drive to Millbrook took 6 hours. 6 hours of mountain roads and small towns that looked exactly the same as when I'd left. 6 hours to think about everything that had gone wrong between me and my family. I'd grown up believing the business would be mine someday. Grandpa used to say I had the eye, the ability to look at a building site and see problems before they happened. Dad used to brag about how I could read blueprints better than men twice my age. Then Marcus graduated college with his business degree, and everything changed. Marcus understands the financial side, Dad had explained. He can talk to clients, make deals. Construction is about more than just building these days. What he didn't say, but what we both knew, was that clients expected to deal with a man. Marcus looked the part, tall, confident, charming. I was just his little sister who got her hands dirty. The Thornfield construction office sat on Main Street, right where it had been for 50 years. But as I pulled into the parking lot, my heart sank. Half the spaces were empty. The sign that Grandpa had put up looked faded and old. Paint peeled from the building's walls. This wasn't the thriving business I'd left behind. Dad was waiting for me in the lobby. He looked older than his 62 years. His hair had gone completely gray, and his hands shook as he poured coffee from the ancient pot in the corner. Thank you for coming, he said quietly. I didn't answer. I wasn't ready to forgive him yet. He led me to his office, the same office where Grandpa used to let me play with blocks while he worked on plans. The desk was covered with papers, all of them marked urgent or overdue. Tell me what happened, I said, keeping my voice as cold as I could manage. Dad sat down heavily in his chair. Marcus had been working on the Riverside Development project for 8 months. It was going to be our biggest contract ever. A shopping complex with restaurants, offices, even a small hotel. How did we even get considered for something that big? Marcus made the connections. He met the developer at some business conference. They hit it off, and suddenly we were in the running against companies 3 times our size. That should have been a red flag right there. Companies like ours didn't get contracts like that without some kind of inside track. The presentation was supposed to be routine, Dad continued. Marcus had everything prepared. Plans, timelines, cost estimates. He'd been working on it day and night. So what went wrong? Dad's hands shook worse as he reached for his coffee cup. I don't know, Marcus won't talk about it. The client called me personally to say they were pulling out. Said there were serious concerns about our ability to handle the project. What kind of concerns? They wouldn't say, just that they'd lost confidence in us completely. I walked to the window and looked out at Main Street. Millbrook wasn't a big town, but it was home to a lot of good people. People who worked hard and deserved better than watching their local businesses fail. Dad, how bad is it? Really? He was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. We might have to close by the end of the month. The deposit money is gone. Marcus says the client is demanding it back. We've got employees we can't pay, suppliers who won't extend our credit anymore. I turned around to face him. What about the other projects? Surely we have other work coming in. That's just it. When word got out about the Riverside deal falling through, other clients started getting nervous. We've lost 3 smaller contracts this week alone. My anger started to mix with something else. Fear. Not for myself, but for all the people who depended on Thornfield Construction. Old Joe, who'd been our foreman since before I was born. Maria, who started as a secretary and worked her way up to project manager. The dozen other employees who had families to feed. Where is Marcus now? I asked. That's what's really worrying me. After the client meeting on Monday, he came back to the office for about an hour. Then he left and nobody's seen him since. His apartment looks like he left in a hurry. Have you been to his office? Dad nodded toward the hallway. See for yourself. I walked down the familiar hallway, past the conference room where I used to sit in on meetings as a teenager, past the supply closet where I'd hidden when Dad and Marcus had their first big fight about the future of the company. Marcus's office door was open. I stepped inside and stopped cold. The place was destroyed. Papers were scattered everywhere. File cabinets hung open with their contents spilled across the floor. His computer was gone. Not just turned off, but completely missing from the desk. This wasn't the office of someone who'd simply failed at a business deal. This was the office of someone who'd been searching for something, or someone who'd been searched. Dad, I called out, my voice tight with worry. You need to see this. He appeared in the doorway and gasped. It wasn't like this on Monday. When Marcus left, everything was normal. I knelt down and started looking through the scattered papers. Most of them were routine, supply orders, employee schedules, safety reports. But then I found something that made my blood run cold. It was a note, written in Marcus's handwriting. I'm sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. Take care of Sarah. I held up the note. Dad, this isn't just about a failed business deal. Something else happened here. Something that made Marcus run. Dad read the note, his face going pale. What do you think it means? I looked around the destroyed office again, thinking about the missing computer, the scattered files, the note that sounded like a goodbye. I think Marcus didn't just lose that deal, I said slowly. I think he was forced to lose it. And whoever forced him might not be done with our family yet. Dad stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Forced? Zara, that sounds crazy. Who would want to hurt our little construction company? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I started gathering the scattered papers from Marcus's floor, looking for clues. Most of it was normal business stuff, but I was looking for something that didn't belong. Dad, do you have copies of the Riverside project files? Some of them. Marcus kept most of the important documents on his computer. The missing computer. That wasn't a coincidence. I spent the next hour going through what files we could find. The timeline didn't make sense. According to the documents, Marcus had submitted plans that were completely different from what our team had prepared. This doesn't look like our work, I said, holding up a set of blueprints. Dad squinted at the papers. Those are the plans Marcus presented to the client. He said he'd made some improvements. But these weren't improvements. They were disasters waiting to happen. The foundation specifications were wrong. The weight calculations didn't add up. Any first-year construction student could see the problems. Dad, these plans would never pass inspection. The building would probably collapse within 5 years. That's impossible. Marcus might not be as experienced as you, but he's not stupid. I set the papers down and pulled out my phone. I'm calling the client. Zara, wait. But I was already dialing. I'd found the contact information in one of the scattered files. Mrs. Chen, project manager for Riverside Development. Hello, this is Zara Thornfield from Thornfield Construction, I said when she answered. I'm calling to follow up on some administrative details about the project. Oh, Mrs. Chen sounded surprised. I thought we made it clear that we're no longer working with your company. Yes, I understand. I'm just trying to get some clarity about what went wrong. For our internal review, there was a pause. Well, I suppose it can't hurt to talk about it now. Your brother seemed very nervous during the presentation. He kept changing his story about the timeline and materials. My heart started beating faster. What do you mean? When we asked about the foundation specifications, he couldn't answer basic questions. Things any contractor should know. And the plans he showed us were completely different from what we'd discussed in our earlier meetings. I felt cold all over. Different how? Well, for one thing, the original plans your brother had shown us were excellent, very professional, very detailed, but during the final presentation, everything had changed. The new plans looked rushed, incomplete. I grabbed a pen and started taking notes. Mrs. Chen, do you still have copies of those original plans? The good ones. I think so. Why? Because I don't think my brother presented those plans voluntarily. After I hung up, Dad was staring at me with wide eyes. She said there were 2 sets of plans. I explained. Good ones that Marcus showed her months ago, and terrible ones that he presented at the final meeting. That doesn't make any sense. I started pulling drawers out of Marcus's desk, looking for anything he might have hidden. In the bottom drawer, wedged behind some old files, I found what I was looking for. A folder marked Riverside Original. Inside were the real plans, the good ones. They were perfect, exactly what the client wanted, exactly what would have won us the contract. Dad, look at this. I spread the plans across his desk. These are incredible. This is the work of someone who really understands construction. Dad studied the plans, his face full of confusion and pride. These are beautiful. This is some of the best work I've ever seen from our company. So why didn't Marcus present these? Why did he present the terrible ones instead? Before Dad could answer, my phone rang. The number was blocked. Hello? Stop digging, Zara. The voice was electronically disguised, like something from a movie. You don't understand what you're dealing with. My blood turned to ice. Who is this? A friend. Marcus got in too deep. If you keep looking, he'll end up just like him. What did you do to my brother? Nothing he didn't bring on himself. But you still have a choice. Go back to your little apartment and forget about Millbrook. Forget about the business. Some things are bigger than your family. Like hell, I will. The voice got colder. You think you're smart, don't you? You think you can solve this like one of your construction problems. This isn't about building codes and blueprints, little girl. This is about money. Real money. And people who will do anything to protect it. What people? What money? Walk away, Zara. Last warning. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, my hands shaking. Dad was watching me with growing alarm. What was that about? Someone doesn't want us looking into what happened to Marcus. Zara, maybe we should call the police. I thought about it, but what would I tell them? That my brother presented bad plans instead of good ones. That someone called and told me to stop investigating. They'd think I was crazy. Not yet, Dad. I need more evidence first. I spent the rest of the day calling our suppliers and subcontractors, asking casual questions about the Riverside project. What I learned made my stomach sick. For months, Marcus had been placing strange orders, materials that didn't match the original plans, equipment rentals that made no sense, changes to specifications that would have made the building unsafe. But here's the weird part. He'd been asking lots of questions too. Questions about safety codes, about proper procedures, about how to do things right, like he knew the orders were wrong, but was trying to figure out how to fix them. It was like he was being forced to buy the wrong stuff, said Tommy from Millbrook Supply. But he kept asking me what he should really be buying instead. By evening, I had a picture of what happened. Marcus had been sabotaging the project for months, but he'd also been trying to find a way around the sabotage. The good plans in his desk drawer weren't just backup copies, they were his attempt to save the deal at the last minute. But someone had stopped him. As I sat in Dad's office, going over everything I'd learned, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your brother is alive. For now, stop investigating or he won't be for much longer. Attached was a photo that made my heart stop. Marcus, tied to a chair in what looked like an abandoned warehouse. He was bruised and scared, but alive. In his hands was today's newspaper, proving the photo was recent. I showed the text to Dad. His face went white. Oh God, they really have him. Dad, this is bigger than just our company. Someone wanted Marcus to fail that presentation. They've been planning this for months. But why? What could they possibly gain from destroying us? I thought about the threatening phone call, about the months of sabotage, about the missing computer and destroyed office. I don't know yet, I said, but I'm going to find out, and I'm going to get Marcus back. Dad grabbed my arm. Zara, it's too dangerous. If they're willing to kidnap Marcus, then they're serious about whatever they're doing, which means we can't just walk away. I looked at the photo of my brother again. Despite everything, despite the years of resentment, despite Dad choosing him over me, Marcus was still family. He was still the little boy who used to follow me around construction sites, asking a million questions about how things worked. Don't worry, Dad. I'm going to figure this out. But first, I need to understand what Marcus got himself into. And whoever was behind this had no idea what they were dealing with. They might have underestimated Marcus, but they were about to learn that the Thornfield family didn't give up without a fight. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that photo of Marcus tied to a chair. So instead of sleeping, I went back to the office at 3 a.m. and started going through old financial records. If someone had been forcing Marcus to sabotage the project for months, there had to be a trail. Money always left tracks, Grandpa used to say. What I found made me sick to my stomach. For the past 2 years, someone had been stealing from the company. Small amounts at first, a few $100s here and there, then bigger chunks, fake invoices for supplies we never received, payments to subcontractors who didn't exist, inflated costs for materials we actually did buy. The signature on all the approvals was Marcus's. My brother had been embezzling money from our family business. I printed out everything and spread it across Dad's desk. When he arrived at 7 a.m. with coffee and donuts, he found me surrounded by evidence of betrayal. Zara, what are you doing here so early? I held up one of the fake invoices. Dad, we need to talk. He set down the coffee and looked at the papers. His face went through a dozen emotions: confusion, realization, and finally, defeat. I know, he whispered. You know? I jumped up from the chair, papers scattering. You knew Marcus was stealing from us, and you didn't stop him? Dad collapsed into his chair like all the air had gone out of him. It started small. He said he needed money for his wedding, for the house he was buying with Sarah. I thought it was just temporary. Temporary? I was pacing now, too angry to sit still. Dad, this adds up to almost $200,000 over 2 years. That's not temporary. That's systematic theft. I was protecting him. Protecting him? What about protecting the company? What about protecting our employees? What about protecting me? Dad looked up at me with tears in his eyes. You don't understand. Marcus isn't as strong as you are. He's not as smart. He's always felt like he had to prove himself. So you let him steal from us instead? I thought if I gave him the business, he'd grow into it. He'd become the leader I knew he could be. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something. Instead, I sat back down and forced myself to think like the investigator I'd become. Dad, if Marcus was stealing this money, where is it? His house is nice, but it's not $200,000 nice. His car is decent, but nothing fancy. Dad looked confused. I assumed he spent it on the wedding, on furniture, on whatever young couples spend money on. I pulled out my phone and called Sarah, Marcus's fiancée. It was early, but this couldn't wait. Zara? Sarah sounded surprised. Have you heard from Marcus? I'm so worried. Sarah, I need to ask you something important. Has Marcus been giving you large amounts of money recently for the wedding or the house? What? No, we've been saving every penny. Marcus has been working overtime and taking on side jobs to pay for everything. He's been stressed about money for months. My blood ran cold. Side jobs? What kind of side jobs? I don't know exactly. Construction consulting, he called it. He'd disappear for a few hours on weekends, come back with cash. But he always seemed upset about it. I hung up and stared at Dad. The money didn't go to his personal life. Someone was making him steal it. That's impossible. Is it? Think about it, Dad. Marcus has been acting strange for months, right? Nervous, secretive, working late all the time. Dad nodded slowly. What if someone found out about the early theft, the wedding money, and used it to blackmail him? What if they forced him to keep stealing, keep sabotaging projects? But who would do that, and why? Before I could answer, my phone rang. It was Maria, our project manager. Zara, thank God you're back. I need to tell you something about Marcus. Something I probably should have told your father months ago. What is it, Maria? About 6 months ago, I caught Marcus in the office late one night. He was going through files that had nothing to do with his projects. Old contracts, employee records, financial statements from years ago. Did you ask him what he was doing? I tried too, but he got really defensive. Said he was just trying to understand the business better. But Zara, he was crying, a grown man, crying over paperwork. My heart ached for my brother. What else? He asked me strange questions about our biggest clients, about which projects made the most money, about how our accounting system worked, like someone was making him gather information. After I hung up, I looked at Dad. Someone's been using Marcus to learn everything about our business. The theft was just the beginning. But why would anyone want to destroy us? We're just a small construction company. I walked to the window and looked out at Main Street. Most of the businesses were family-owned, passed down through generations just like ours. But lately, I'd noticed changes. The old hardware store was now part of a chain. The family restaurant had been bought by a corporation. Dad, what other businesses in town have closed recently? He thought for a minute. Well, Patterson's Plumbing went under last year. And Henderson Electric lost their biggest contracts and had to sell. Who bought them? Some development company. I can't remember the name. I had a terrible feeling in my stomach. Dad, I think someone is systematically destroying small businesses in this area, and they used Marcus to attack us from the inside. That's crazy, Zara. Is it? Look at the evidence. Marcus was forced to steal money, weakening our finances. He was made to sabotage the biggest contract in our history. Someone wanted us to fail. Dad was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was broken. I failed him, didn't I? I put so much pressure on him to succeed that I made him an easy target. We both failed him, I said quietly. I was so angry about not getting the business that I never noticed he was in trouble. What do we do now? I looked at the photo of Marcus again, tied up and scared but alive. My little brother, who used to build block towers with me, who asked me to check for monsters under his bed, who followed me around like a lost puppy until the day Dad decided he was the heir apparent. Now we get him back. Can we figure out who's behind this? How? I smiled, but it wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile Grandpa used to get when someone tried to cheat him on a contract. By doing what Thornfields do best, we investigate every detail until we find the truth. And then we build a case so strong that whoever took Marcus will regret messing with our family. Dad straightened up in his chair. For the first time in days, he looked like the man who'd built this company into something special. What do you need me to do? First, we're going to trace every dollar Marcus stole and figure out where it really went. Then we're going to find out which company bought Patterson's and Henderson's businesses. And then we're going to war. But as I said the words, I realized something that made my blood freeze. If someone was powerful enough to orchestrate all of this, if they had enough reach to blackmail Marcus and destroy other businesses, then we weren't just fighting for our company anymore. We were fighting for our lives. That thought kept running through my head as I sat in my old bedroom that night, staring at my laptop screen. I couldn't go back to my apartment. Not when Marcus was out there somewhere, counting on me to figure this out. I'd been making phone calls all afternoon to other construction companies in the area. What I learned made my hands shake as I typed notes. 3 other family businesses had failed in the past year. Just like Dad said, but worse than I'd imagined. Patterson's Plumbing didn't just lose contracts. According to Jim Patterson, they'd started having problems when his son Danny began making mistakes on big jobs. Simple stuff that Danny had been doing right for years suddenly went wrong. It was like he forgot everything he knew, Jim told me over the phone. Pipes installed backwards, wrong materials ordered, permits filed incorrectly. I couldn't understand it. Did Danny seem stressed about anything? Now that you mention it, yeah. He was working late a lot, taking mysterious phone calls. His wife said he'd been having nightmares. Henderson Electric had the same story. Old man Henderson's nephew, Rick, had been making costly errors for months before they lost their biggest client. Rick was a good electrician, Henderson said, but suddenly he was installing the wrong wiring, missing safety inspections, ordering equipment we didn't need. It was like someone was telling him to mess up on purpose. The third company, Miller Landscaping, had gone under when the owner's daughter started bidding jobs at prices that lost them money on every contract. Lisa knew better than to bid that low, her father told me, but she insisted the numbers were right. When I tried to talk to her about it, she just started crying and said she had to do it that way. I hung up from that last call and stared at my notes. 4 family businesses, 4 second-generation family members making inexplicable mistakes. 4 companies that had failed and been bought out by the same mysterious buyer. Apex Development Group. I'd never heard of Apex before today, but I was starting to hate them. Every failed business, every lost contract, every family that had to start over, it all led back to them. I tried to research Apex online, but the trail was confusing. They were owned by a shell company, which was owned by another shell company, which was owned by something called Mountain Holdings LLC. After that, the ownership disappeared into a maze of legal documents I couldn't understand, but I knew someone who might be able to help. I called my college roommate, Janet, who'd become a lawyer in the state capitol. Zara, it's been forever. How are you? Not great, Janet. I need a favor. Can you help me trace the ownership of a company? Depends on the company. What's going on? I explained everything. Marcus's kidnapping, the sabotage, the pattern of failed businesses. Janet listened without interrupting. This sounds serious, Zara, like organized crime serious. That's what I'm afraid of. Can you look into Apex Development Group? I'll do what I can. But if this is as big as you think, you need to be careful. These kinds of operations don't mess around. After we hung up, I realized how quiet the house had become. Dad had gone to bed hours ago, exhausted by everything we'd learned, but I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Marcus tied to that chair. My phone buzzed with a text message. Having trouble sleeping? My blood went cold. The number was blocked, just like the threatened call earlier. Who is this? Someone who's been watching you make phone calls all day. You're a busy little bee, aren't you? They've been watching me. How long? Since I got to town? Since Dad first called me. What do you want? The same thing I wanted this morning. For you to stop digging. But you didn't listen. Where's my brother? Safe. Uncomfortable, but safe. Whether he stays that way depends on you. I got up and looked out my bedroom window. The street was dark and empty, but I had the feeling someone was out there, watching. What do you want me to do? Tomorrow morning, you and your father are going to sign some papers. Bankruptcy documents. You're going to sell all company assets to Apex Development Group for 10 cents on the dollar. And if we refuse, then your brother becomes a permanent part of our operation, and you might find yourself having an accident. You can't just force us to sell, can't we? Let me tell you what's going to happen, Zara. Tomorrow, the bank is going to call in your company's loans. All of them. Your insurance company is going to find safety violations that will cost you hundreds of thousands to fix. The State Contractor Licensing Board is going to launch an investigation into your business practices. My heart sank. You can do all that? We have friends everywhere, judges, bank managers, insurance adjusters, state officials. This isn't some amateur operation. How many other families have you destroyed? Does it matter? What matters is that you have a choice. Sign the papers, and your brother lives. You and your father can start over somewhere else. Refuse, and none of you will be around to start over anywhere. The line went dead. I sat on my bed, shaking. This wasn't just about money or business competition. This was about power. Someone with enough connections to manipulate banks, insurance companies, and government agencies was systematically taking over the construction industry in our region. And they'd turned our own family members against us to do it. I thought about Marcus, somewhere out there in the dark, probably scared and wondering if anyone was coming for him. I thought about Dad, finally understanding that his weak son had been protecting all of us by sabotaging his own dreams. Then I thought about Grandpa, who used to say that the measure of a person wasn't how they acted when things were easy, but how they fought when everything was falling apart. I pulled out my laptop and started typing an email to Janet. Emergency. Need you to research everything you can about Apex Development Group tonight. Also need contacts at the FBI Economic Crimes Unit. This is bigger than I thought. Then I started making a list of everyone I could call for help. Old friends from college who worked in construction, reporters I'd met at industry conferences, anyone who might be able to shine a light on what was happening. Because whoever was behind this had made one crucial mistake. They'd assumed that threatening the Thornfield family would make us back down. They didn't understand that threats just made us fight harder. My phone buzzed again. Another text from the blocked number. Still awake? Good. Look outside your window. I walked to the window and pushed back the curtain. A black car was parked across the street, engine running. I couldn't see who was inside, but I could feel them watching me. We know where you are every minute of every day, came the next text. Remember that when you're deciding what to do tomorrow. I closed the curtain and sat back down at my laptop. My hands were shaking, but I kept typing. If they thought I was going to be intimidated by threats and surveillance, they didn't know the first thing about being a Thornfield. But as I worked, one thought kept nagging at me. How had they known I was making phone calls? How had they known exactly what I was researching? Either they had the house bugged, or someone I trusted was feeding them information. And that possibility scared me more than all their threats combined. I barely slept, jumping at every sound outside. When morning came, I found Dad in the kitchen, staring at a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. They called me too, he said, without looking up. At 5 this morning, said we have until noon to sign the papers. What papers? He pointed to a manila envelope on the table. A courier dropped them off 20 minutes ago. I opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside were bankruptcy documents, asset transfer forms, and a sales agreement that would give Apex Development Group everything we'd built for almost nothing. Dad, we can't sign these. What choice do we have? They have Marcus. We call the police. We call the FBI. My phone rang. The caller ID showed Janet's number. Zara, don't say anything specific over the phone, just listen. Apex Development Group is connected to some very dangerous people. Federal level dangerous. I've already made some calls to friends in law enforcement. Can they help? They're working on it, but these things take time, and from what you told me, you don't have time. What should I do? Be very careful who you trust. This organization has people everywhere. And Zara, whatever you're planning, don't try to be a hero. After I hung up, Dad was watching me with desperate eyes. What did she say? Before I could answer, there was a knock at the door. Through the window, I could see 2 men in expensive suits. Mr. Thornfield, we're here to help with the paperwork. Dad started to get up, but I grabbed his arm. Something felt wrong. These men didn't look like lawyers or businessmen. They looked like the kind of people who solved problems with violence. Dad, don't answer the door. But if we don't sign, then we find another way. I pulled out my phone and called Maria at the office. Maria, I need you to do something for me. Call the police and tell them to come to Dad's house. Tell them we're being threatened. Zara, what's going on? Just do it. Please. The knocking got louder, more insistent. Mr. Thornfield, we know you're in there. This doesn't have to be difficult. I looked around the kitchen, thinking fast. The back door led to the woods behind the house. If we could get outside, we might be able to hide until the police arrived. Dad, we're leaving, right now. I can't run from this, Zara. They'll hurt Marcus. They're going to hurt him anyway. People like this don't keep their promises. The front door rattled as someone tried the handle. Then I heard a different sound. A key turning in the lock. They had a key to Dad's house. How was that possible? Back door, now. We slipped out through the kitchen just as I heard footsteps in the living room. Dad and I ran across the backyard and into the tree line, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might explode. Behind us, I could hear voices. They're not here. Check upstairs. The neighbor said she saw them this morning. We crouched behind a fallen log, trying to stay quiet. Dad was breathing heavy, and I was terrified they'd hear us. That's when my phone buzzed with a text. Running won't help, Zara. We have your brother, remember? I stared at the message, realizing something that made my blood freeze. They knew we'd run. They knew exactly where we were and what we were doing. Someone was feeding them information in real time. I thought about everyone who knew we were at the house. Maria.
Janet.
The police I'd asked Maria to call. Then I remembered something that made me sick. When I'd called Maria, I'd heard something in the background. A voice I recognized but couldn't place. Now I knew where I'd heard it before. It was the electronically disguised voice from the threatening calls. Except this time, I'd heard it without the electronic filter. Maria, our project manager, who'd been with the company for 15 years, who knew every detail about our operations, who had access to all our files, all our financial records, all our client information. Maria, who'd caught Marcus going through old files, who'd told me about his strange questions, who'd been feeding me information all along, making sure I discovered exactly what they wanted me to find. Dad, I whispered, we need to get out of here. But first, I need to make a phone call. I called a number I'd memorized but never used. The emergency contact Janet had given me for her FBI friend. Agent Rodriguez, this is Zara Thornfield. Janet Morrison said you might be able to help me. Miss Thornfield, we've been expecting your call. Where are you right now? Hiding in the woods behind my father's house. There are men inside with guns, and they're trying to force us to sign over our business. We're tracking your location through your phone. Stay where you are. Help is coming. They have my brother. He's been kidnapped. We know we've been building a case against this organization for months. Your brother isn't the first family member they've taken. What do you mean? Apex Development Group is a front for a much larger operation. They've been systematically taking over construction and development in rural areas across 3 states. When families won't cooperate, they use whatever leverage they can find. How did you know about us? We've been watching them. When your brother was taken, it triggered our investigation protocols. I heard sirens in the distance, getting closer. Agent Rodriguez, there's something else. I think someone in our company is working with them. Our project manager, Maria Santos. We suspected as much. These operations always need inside help. The sirens were getting louder. Through the trees, I could see police cars pulling up to the house. Miss Thornfield, we're going to need your help to get your brother back. Are you willing to work with us? I looked at Dad, who was listening to every word with growing hope and fear. What do you need me to do? We need you to make them think you're giving up. Sign their papers, let them think they've won. But we'll be watching every move they make. What if something goes wrong? What if they hurt Marcus? They won't. Not if they think they're getting what they want. But we need you to trust us. I closed my eyes, thinking about Marcus tied to that chair, about all the other families who'd been destroyed by these people, about Grandpa's legacy and everything we stood to lose. Okay, I said, I'll do it. But as I said the words, I realized something that changed everything. This wasn't just about saving Marcus or our business anymore. This was about stopping them from destroying anyone else's family. And I was about to become the bait in a trap that could either save everyone or get us all killed. 2 hours later, I sat in the FBI field office, wearing a wire under my shirt and trying not to throw up from nerves. Agent Rodriguez had explained the plan 3 times, but I still felt like I was walking into a nightmare. Remember, he said, adjusting the tiny microphone taped to my chest, act defeated. Let them think they've broken you. We need them to take you to where they're holding your brother. What if they don't? What if they just take the signed papers and disappear? They won't. These people are thorough. They'll want to make sure you can't cause problems later. Dad squeezed my hand. I should be the one doing this. No, Dad. They want me. I'm the one who's been investigating them. Agent Rodriguez handed me the signed bankruptcy papers. These are real documents, but they won't hold up in court. We'll make sure of that. But to them, it'll look like you're giving up everything. My phone buzzed. A text from the blocked number. Riverside Park, 1 hour. Come alone, or your brother dies. I showed the message to Agent Rodriguez. He nodded grimly. That's where we expected them to make contact. We'll have agents positioned around the park, but they'll stay hidden until we're sure your brother is safe. What if something goes wrong? Then you run. Don't try to be a hero. But as I drove toward Riverside Park, the same park where Marcus and I used to play as kids, I knew I wouldn't run. Not when my brother's life was on the line. The park was empty when I arrived. I sat on the bench by the old oak tree, where we used to have picnics, holding the envelope with the signed papers, trying to look defeated. A black car pulled up. Derek Lawson got out, and my heart nearly stopped. Derek Lawson, the city planning commissioner, the man who approved all the development projects in town, the man who would have known about every construction contract, every family business, every opportunity to strike. Hello, Zara, he said, walking toward me with a smile that made my skin crawl. You always were too smart for your own good. Where's my brother? Safe? For now, but that depends on you. He sat down next to me on the bench. Do you have the papers? I handed him the envelope. He opened it and scanned the documents. Excellent. Though I have to say, I'm disappointed it came to this. I always respected your family. Respected us? You destroyed us. Derek laughed. We gave you opportunities, Zara. We offered your brother a partnership. All he had to do was cooperate. You blackmailed him. We offered him a choice. Help us acquire undervalued properties, and everyone wins. Refuse, and everyone loses. I tried to keep my voice steady. How many other families did you give that same choice? Does it matter? Business is business. Small companies like yours were never going to survive anyway. We just accelerated the process, and you used our own family members to destroy us. Derek's smile got wider. That was the beautiful part. Do you know how easy it is to find leverage on people? Your brother needed money for his girlfriend's medical bills. Danny Patterson was gambling away his father's business. Rick Henderson had tax problems he didn't want his uncle to know about. My blood boiled, but I forced myself to stay calm. The Wire was recording everything. What about Lisa Miller? Student loans. Amazing how much debt young people will take on these days. So you turned them all into saboteurs. We gave them simple instructions: make small mistakes, create problems, weaken their family businesses from the inside. In exchange, we helped with their personal problems, until they tried to stop. Derek's smile faded. Your brother developed a conscience at the worst possible time. He was supposed to present the sabotaged plans for Riverside. Instead, he tried to save the deal with the real plans. So you kidnapped him. We stopped him from ruining months of careful work. I felt sick. Where is he, Derek? Somewhere safe. But Zara, signing these papers is just the first step. You see, you know too much now. You've talked to too many people, asked too many questions. What do you mean? Derek stood up and pulled out his phone. I mean, you're not going home tonight. 2 more men appeared from behind the trees. I recognized them as the ones who'd been at Dad's house that morning. The wire you're wearing picked up our entire conversation, didn't it? Derek said casually. My heart stopped. I don't know what you're talking about. Please. We've been monitoring FBI communications for weeks. Agent Rodriguez is a good man, but he's not very creative. Derek nodded to one of his men, who pulled out a device that looked like a radio scanner. We knew they'd try to wire you. We've been feeding them false information all day. That's impossible. Is it? You think we could operate this long without having people inside law enforcement? Just like we had Maria inside your company. The world tilted around me. If they knew about the wire, if they'd been feeding false information to the FBI, the agents positioned around the park are exactly where we wanted them to be, chasing shadows on the other side of town. Derek's phone buzzed. He looked at it and smiled. Perfect timing. Your father just arrived at the warehouse district, thinking he was going to rescue your brother. The FBI agents are with him, of course. You're lying. Am I? Check your phone. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands. There was a new text message with a photo attached. It showed Dad and 3 FBI agents walking into an abandoned warehouse. The timestamp was 2 minutes ago. They're walking into a trap, Derek said cheerfully. And so are you. One of his men grabbed my arm. Time to go, Miss Thornfield. As they dragged me toward the black car, I realized the horrible truth. This had never been about saving Marcus. This had been about gathering all the threats to their operation in one place. Dad, the FBI agents, and now me. We were all walking into whatever they had planned. But as the car door slammed shut and Derek got in beside me, I remembered something Agent Rodriguez had told me. If something goes wrong, don't give up hope. We have backup plans you don't know about. I just prayed those backup plans would be enough to save us all. Because I was about to find out exactly how far these people were willing to go to protect their empire. The car pulled up to an abandoned warehouse on the edge of town. Through the windows, I could see Dad's truck and 2 FBI vehicles parked outside. My heart sank. Derek hadn't been lying. They really had walked right into the trap. Welcome to the end of the road, Derek said, as his men pulled me out of the car. Inside the warehouse, I found Marcus tied to a chair in the center of a large, empty space. He looked terrible, bruised, exhausted, scared, but his eyes lit up when he saw me. Zara, I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. Before I could answer, Derek's men brought in Dad and 3 FBI agents, their hands zip-tied behind their backs. Agent Rodriguez looked furious with himself. I'm sorry, Zara, he said. We walked right into it. Derek stood in front of us like he was giving a presentation. This is what happens when people don't understand their place in the world. When they think they can fight forces bigger than themselves. What are you going to do with us? Dad asked. Well, that depends. You see, we have a little problem. Too many people know about our operation now. Too many loose ends. Derek walked over to Marcus and put his hand on my brother's shoulder. Marcus flinched. Your son has been very helpful to us over the past few months. Haven't you, Marcus? Tell them, Marcus said, his voice broken. Tell them everything. Derek smiled. Marcus didn't just steal money from your company. He's been feeding us information about every family business in 3 counties. Client lists, financial records, personal problems that could be exploited. I stared at my brother in shock. Marcus, what is he talking about? I had to, Marcus whispered, tears running down his face. Sarah was sick. She needed surgery that insurance wouldn't cover. They said they'd pay for everything if I just gave them some information. What kind of information? At first, just simple stuff. Which companies were struggling, which ones were making money. But then they wanted more. They wanted me to find personal problems, debts, addictions, family secrets. Derek laughed. Marcus became quite the little spy. He'd go to industry meetings, construction conferences, even social events. People trusted him because he was a Thornfield. My heart broke for my brother. He'd been trying to save the woman he loved, and they'd turned him into a weapon against his own community. But then Marcus got greedy, Derek continued. He started asking for more money, said he wanted out of the deal. That's not true, Marcus said desperately. I never asked for more money. I asked you to leave Sarah alone. When she got better, I wanted to stop. And that's when we had to get creative. We couldn't let our best source of information walk away. Derek pulled out his phone and showed us a photo. It was Sarah, sitting in what looked like a hospital room. But it wasn't a hospital. It was another warehouse. We've had Sarah for 3 weeks, Derek said casually. Marcus thought she was getting treatment at a special clinic. Really, she's been our guest, making sure Marcus stayed cooperative. Marcus made a sound like a wounded animal. You said she was getting better? You said the treatment was working. The treatment was working, we just had to make sure you kept working too. I wanted to kill Derek with my bare hands. These people hadn't just destroyed businesses, they'd turned love into a weapon. Here's what's gonna happen, Derek continued. In about an hour, there's going to be a tragic accident. A gas leak in this old warehouse. 5 people who were trying to expose our operation will unfortunately be caught in the explosion. You're insane, Agent Rodriguez said. I'm practical. Dead people can't testify in court. But as Derek was talking, I noticed something. One of the FBI agents, a woman I hadn't seen before, was working on her zip ties. Her hands were almost free. I tried not to look directly at her, but I caught her eye for just a second. She gave me the tiniest nod. The backup plan Agent Rodriguez had mentioned. Derek? I said, trying to keep his attention on me. Before you kill us all, I want to know something. Why our family specifically? Why start with us? Because you represented everything we hated about this business. 4 generations of honest contractors who did good work and treated people fairly. You made it harder for us to operate. How? When clients worked with companies like yours, they expected quality. They expected honesty. They made it difficult for us to cut corners and inflate costs. So you decided to destroy us. We decided to remove the competition. That's when the female FBI agent made her move. In one quick motion, she freed her hands, pulled out a hidden gun, and pointed it at Derek. FBI, everyone on the ground now. Derek's men reached for their weapons, but suddenly the warehouse filled with the sound of breaking glass. FBI agents came through windows and doors from every direction. The backup plan had worked. In the chaos that followed, I ran to Marcus and started untying his ropes. I'm so sorry, Zara, he sobbed. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I just wanted to save Sarah. I know, I said, hugging my brother for the first time in years. I know you did what you thought you had to do. Dad appeared beside us, his zip ties cut by one of the agents. Are you boys okay? We will be, I said, once we get Sarah back. Agent Rodriguez walked over, rubbing his wrists. She's already safe. We found her an hour ago at another location. She's at the hospital getting checked out, but she's going to be fine. Marcus broke down completely then, crying with relief and guilt and exhaustion. Later, as we sat in the FBI office giving our statements, Agent Rodriguez explained how they'd really planned the operation. We knew they had people inside law enforcement, he said, so we fed false information to our own team. The agents who went to the warehouse with your father were volunteers who knew it was a trap. What about the wire? We knew they'd detect it. That's why we had Agent Chen positioned as a prisoner. She had the real recording equipment. How did you find Sarah? We'd been tracking all of Derek's properties for weeks. When Marcus was taken, we intensified our search. 3 months later, I stood in the newly renovated Thornfield construction office, looking at a sign that read Thornfield and Associates, honest construction for honest people. The associates part was new. We'd hired back all our old employees, plus several people from the other companies that Derek's organization had destroyed. We were rebuilding not just our business, but our entire community's construction industry. Marcus walked into my office carrying 2 cups of coffee. He looked healthier than he had in years. The therapy was helping, and so was the fact that Sarah was completely recovered and they'd finally had their wedding. The Henderson Electric project is ahead of schedule, he said, setting down my coffee. And the Patterson plumbing renovation bid came in under budget. How's the new community center project coming? Good. Old Joe says it's some of the best work he's ever done. I smiled. The community center was being built on the site where Derek's organization had planned their shopping complex. Instead of a monument to corporate greed, it would be a place where families could come together. Marcus, I said, I want you to know something. I'm proud of you. For what? For nearly destroying everything? For protecting the person you love? For trying to find a way out when things got bad? For having the courage to tell the truth when it mattered? He sat down across from my desk. I don't think I'll ever forgive myself for what I did to those other families. Then don't forgive yourself. Use that guilt to make sure it never happens again. My phone rang. It was a potential client from a town 2 counties over. Word was spreading about our work, about our commitment to honest business practices. Thornfield Construction. This is Zara. How can we help you build something amazing? As I took notes on the new project, a school that would serve 3 small communities, I thought about Grandpa's old saying about foundations and families. We'd almost lost everything. But in the end, we'd built something stronger than what we'd started with. Derek and his organization were in federal prison. The FBI had used our case to break up similar operations in 4 other states. Dozens of families were getting their businesses back, their lives back, their hope. And the Thornfield family, we were finally working together the way we always should have been. Dad handled the big picture, planning. Marcus managed client relations and had turned out to be brilliant at it. I ran day-to-day operations and made sure every job was done right. Sarah had joined us too, handling our books and making sure we never again missed the warning signs of financial problems. Family dinner tonight? Marcus asked as he got up to leave. Wouldn't miss it, but I'm bringing dessert. Please tell me it's not gas station cookies. I grinned. Actually, I was thinking about trying to bake something myself. That's even more dangerous than the gas station cookies. We both laughed, and for the first time in years, it felt completely natural. As Marcus left, I turned back to my computer to work on the school proposal. But first, I pulled out my phone and sent a text to Sarah. How are you feeling today? Great. Doctor says everything looks perfect. She was pregnant, due in 6 months. The baby would be the 5th generation of Thornfields, growing up in a business built on honesty, family, and second chances. Outside my window, I could see old Joe teaching Marcus's techniques to the new apprentices we'd hired. Young people from families that had been hurt by Derek's organization, learning skills that would let them build their own futures. The business Dad gave to Marcus had nearly destroyed us all, but in the end, it taught us the most important lesson of all. Success isn't about being the strongest or the smartest, or even the most talented. It's about being there for each other when everything falls apart. It's about building something together that's stronger than what any of us could create alone. And sometimes, if you're really lucky, you get to help other people build their dreams too. That's the end of Ava and Jackson's story. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones who need our help the greatest. I'd love to know where you're listening from today. Drop your city or country in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button. It really helps spread these stories of hope and family to more people who need to hear them. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss a story about second chances, forgiveness, and the power of family love. Speaking of amazing stories, there's another incredible tale waiting for you right on your screen. Click on it now to discover another journey that will remind you why kindness and family matter most. Thanks for listening, and remember, every family deserves a second chance.